Hey guys, Steinixos here. So today we'll be talking about the Ope Ope Devil Fruit. Specifically, we'll be talking about how a fully mastered and unrestricted Ope Ope Devil Fruit could look like. Now, quite a few people don't realize this, but many devil fruits in One Piece are placed under heavy plot-driven restrictions. Like, more often times than not, this takes the form of giving them to weak characters who can't fully utilize the potential of the devil fruit. Examples of this include Sugar being given the Hubby Hubby no Mi, Foxy being given the Slow Devil Fruit, and Orochi being given the 8-headed snake Mythical Zoan Devil Fruit. Like, this just completely prevents the possibility of us ever getting to see higher level usage of these devil fruits, when in fact, these devil fruits at higher levels are absolutely broken. But interestingly, almost no other devil fruit in the series has been placed under as heavy a restriction as the Ope Ope no Mi devil fruit. Now, many of you may be confused by me saying this, because firstly, the Ope Ope no Mi was not given to a weak character. It was given to Trafalgar Law, a brilliant doctor and a worst generation member who, through his proficiency with his fruit, is currently one of the strongest in the series. And also, isn't the Ope Ope no Mi fruit already one of the most powerful fruits in the series, given that at base it already provides unimaginable hacks? So some of you may be wondering, how can I say it is heavily restricted? Well, let's go through what the Ope Ope no Mi fruit can currently do and compare it to what it would be like if it were unrestricted. Now, just as a reminder, the Ope Ope no Mi fruit is a Paramecia type devil fruit that makes its user modification human. Through this devil fruit, the user is able to manifest a spherical space called a room, and in this room, as Smoker describes, everything is under the user's control. It is as if you're a patient lying helplessly on the operating table and the Ope Ope no Mi user is the surgeon. Now, it is very important that you keep that description in mind, because that total control is what is quintessential to this fruit. So the first thing we need to discuss is the intense stamina drain of the Ope Ope no Mi devil fruit. Now, absolutely nothing is wrong with a base requirement of excessive stamina consumption. After all, it is a godly power, so at least a base trade-off should be expected. However, where the first clear restriction is shown is that the only method that Law uses to decrease this stamina burden is just the general method that anyone does of getting stronger, which increases stamina. Like, that makes no sense. Take Luffy, the main character, for example. His fruit is not only bringing him back from the dead, but when faced with the exhaustive nature of his Gear 5 ability, he's just given stamina manipulation to in effect reset his stamina. And remember, though it is a part of the Nika fruit to grant special bodily abilities, it isn't the modification devil fruit. The modification devil fruit is the Ope Ope no Mi. So the actual modification devil fruit that is able to even replace non-functioning human body parts, to give back functions to humans like Brownbeard and his crew, and which is also able to interact with and switch souls at a whim. If it weren't being restricted, the user should obviously be able to do some modification on themselves, which simulates Gojo's 6 eyes, for example, which would make their stamina consumption when using their devil fruit close to zero, or at least so optimized that it isn't even a consideration. Remember, that's the whole point of this devil fruit, to modify. So of course the user should also be able to modify themselves. So if that restriction were lifted, our godly surgeon of death would be able to operate for as long as they like. Now, the next thing is that Law currently has incomplete information in his room. It seems that the only information that he has is that of what he can see with his eyes, his observation haki, or using his scan technique. Now again, even before we get into the upper extremes of what this fruit should be able to do if not restricted, remember, even someone like Enel was able to combine his basic observation haki with his devil fruit abilities to increase the range and pick up added information of being literally able to hear what anyone is saying within his observation haki range. And remember, this was just through picking up electric waves in the air, which his lightning fruit allowed him to do. Law, in comparison, has a whole room where everything in this room should be under his control. And I mean, remember, at base, Law is literally even manipulating space through teleportation, and against Big Mom, he seems to be restricting vibration and thus was able to remove and prevent sound. So even within this already established context, you would expect Law to have had some combination between his observation haki and his devil fruit, whether generally or combining it with a specific technique like scan to passively get way more added information than Inel, who remember could only pick up electric waves. But you'll note, due to plot-driven restrictions, no such interaction was given to Law. But even outside of a combination of the Ope Ope no Mi with observation haki, I'd expect a fully mastered and unrestricted Ope Ope no Mi fruit by itself to grant the user absolute information on everything within its room. And when I say everything, I do mean everything. So this would include physical information such as the shape, size, position, and composition of everything in the room down to a subatomic level, and it would also include intangible characteristics such as the condition of everything within the room. So for living things, this would mean he would know things like their health status, how much stamina they have left, their mental state, and even how long they have left to live. So something very similar to the appraisal ability and status window function you often see in isekai mangas. Now basically so far, the unrestricted Ope Ope no Mi user is one who can operate for as long as they like and who has maximum information on everything within their operating theater. Thus the next obvious thing then would be the size of their operating room. So when Law just came onto the scene at Sawadee Archipelago, his room was pretty small. However, with training, his room size grew such that it is now able to encompass mountains and can also be so large that in the fight against Doflamingo, Duffy wasn't even able to discern that he was actually in Law's room. So the Ope Ope no Mi size is dependent on the level of the user. So as you would expect, if we are talking about a fully mastered and unrestricted user who, remember, now has a Gojo 6 Eyes Light modification so they can't run out of stamina, then barring some other unidentified factor, it should allow the user to make a room of any size. So this could include ranges such as a continent, a planet, or even the universe. There is no restriction. And then remember, the user would have absolute information on everything within this room. Like I'm hoping you've realized why Oda has chosen to restrict this devil fruit in particular so heavily. But we've only even scratched the surface. Because believe it or not, all we've done so far is set the stage. We've yet to get into the actual application of techniques. So if you've watched my Law vs Gojo video, you'll see where I explained that Law's amputate does not bypass space and cut at the source. Well, it turns out that I was completely wrong about this, because with our room amputate against Stronger, for example, in chapter 1064, Law is outside of his room. So it's obvious that the amputate slash isn't moving through space from Law, but rather it completely bypasses the space and just automatically takes effect on his target within the room. Now this is already pretty broken, but it's even more broken when you realize that an unrestricted Ope Ope no Mi user should be able to apply this spatial bypass function of amputate to all his other techniques. So a Gamma Knife, for example, could just automatically take effect on the opponent without Law having to actually move an inch. This renders an entire category of defenses, like Gojo's Infinity, just completely useless, given that all of the attacks from the Ope Ope no Mi user would just bypass them. To go even further, inside an unrestricted Ope Ope no Mi user's room, they should have full matter manipulation. And I mean, even within the already established context, this is already just a fact. Like at a macro scale, Law is able to split apart and move around large objects, like large rocks and ships and the body parts, and rearrange them together in different functional constructs. And we know that Law is even able to act at an atomic or at least molecular scale, given that, remember, sound is just the vibration of molecules. So to completely remove and prevent any sound in his room, as he did against Big Mom, he would literally need to be stopping the vibration of the atoms or molecules. This was also demonstrated by Law drastically restructuring the size of his sword without any indication that he used foreign materials. So again, even within this already established context, separate from arbitrary plot restrictions, there is absolutely nothing stopping Law, much less an unrestricted and fully mastered Ope Ope no Mi user, from doing matter manipulation like Douglas Bullet, who is able to break down and reforms things as he sees fit. or matter manipulation in other ways, like rather than just stopping the atomic or molecular movement to prevent sound, the Ope Ope no Mi user could change the structure of atoms themselves and even the fundamental fields and forces that make up the world. So we've got matter manipulation down to the smallest level, but again, it doesn't end there, because even at base, Law's fruit already allows him to manipulate more non-physical things like space, as we've seen with his teleportation, and conceptual things like souls, as we've seen with his soul switch. So again, given this, and given that we know other devil fruits like the Pa fruit can provide interaction and manipulation of even more abstruse conceptual things like pain and fatigue, it's quite reasonable to say that within the room of a fully mastered and unrestricted Ope Ope no Mi devil fruit user, things such as time, physical laws, emotions, and even perception would be under the Ope Ope fruit user's control. Reality itself could be subject to the user's whims. Now, I could say much more about this devil fruit, such as the fact that the perpetual youth surgery needing to sacrifice the life of the Ope Ope no Mi user is yet again another obvious plot-induced restriction. But at this point, I think you should have gotten the picture about why I say this is one of the most restricted devil fruit in the series, as well as the picture of what a fully mastered and unrestricted Ope Ope no Mi fruit could look like. And for those of you who are interested, there's a manhwa called Invincible at the Start, which has a main character that uses a room-like power similar to Law, but who, in contrast to Law, has access to way more of its functions. So reading that manhwa may help you to get a better picture of what an unrestricted Ope Ope no Mi user could be like. But anyway, that's the video guys. Let me know what you thought about it in the comment section down below. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you liked the video. But anyway, see you guys next time.